So we're gonna get into our first question here. This one was commented and perhaps somewhat disingenuously on one of the videos I've made. But the question is, if God hates homosexuals, then why did he make them that way? So, I mean, my initial response to that would be, if you're truly asking that question, you didn't watch my video the whole way through, because I specifically said that God didn't make them that way. It wasn't his will, it wasn't his plan. There's great work being done by some psychologists who are less than mainstream right now, who are being censored because they are actually and truly helping people to recover from homosexual feelings and emotions and sentiments. And the recovery rate, the people who are showing signs of recovery and betterment is so significant that these people are just cast out, and the work they're doing is being discredited because it goes against what most people will believe about homosexuality. In the 20th century, the homosexual lobby had a real problem, because your evangelical Christians like myself and Pastor Milton would say that homosexuality is a deviant lifestyle. It's immoral, and it's not what God had planned for marriage and the family. And this really stumped a lot of people in the gay lobby. They didn't really have a great answer to that. But what they said was like, well, what if we were just born that way, and that would make people who disagree with us giant bigots. And so that's what they went with. But more and more you see more and more studies coming out, more and more proof and evidence in psychology and all over the science realm, and perhaps on the edges, but it is truly there if you're interested in finding it. It's very clear that it's a lot of nurture, and not the nature of the person. It wasn't the way they were created. It was mostly in their upbringing and events that transpired in their life. A lot of people who are homosexual don't have great relationships with their fathers. They don't have awesome relationships, and like I said in my other video, it kind of spirals off into all sorts of other deviant and unfortunate things. But the truth is that God doesn't hate these people, and we don't hate these people. We feel sympathy for them because they're being lied to, ultimately, by the media and people who peddle this nonsense about homosexual being normal, and it should be accepted and this and that. They're being tripped. That they got hoodwinked by people who have a clear agenda in hand, which is to destroy the family. And we feel nothing but sympathy for them. And like Pastor Milton, I'm sure you'd agree that we want to help these people and get them better as soon as possible, because we want people to be living a godly life where they're most effective.
Yeah, the thing about it is that when I heard that question, that's the unfortunate part, because people automatically believe that God hates the homosexual or the lesbian or the heterosexual who practices promiscuous sin. He doesn't hate the person. So let's just separate the two. He doesn't hate the person. He hates the sin, and the reason why he hates the sin is because he knows ultimately it will hurt the person. I mean, it's the homosexuality and lesbianism and alternative lifestyles is not something that's new. I mean, it goes all the way back to the beginning of the Bible and everything, and it talks about it. And in every instant, God, they call it, the world calls it homosexuality, but God calls it fornication. Fornication is simple: any kind of sex outside of the context of biblical marriage. It doesn't matter if you're homosexual, lesbian, same male and female, none of that matters. God's thing is, if you practice these lifestyles outside the context of marriage, because there is a law called the law of sin and death, there will be consequences, not because God has brought those consequences upon you, but simply because there's another law called sin and death, that there's going to be a result. There's no getting around that. So he's always trying to get people to stray away from that lifestyle. From your point with the medical science and everything, there's a lot of people who have been who used to live that lifestyle, who were brought out of that lifestyle. I mean, it wasn't overnight, it was a process, but it's possible. And scientifically, through all the studies, there's nothing that proves that a person was made that way, quote unquote. But I mean, I have family members who have, and some who still practice that lifestyle today. They know that that's not necessarily what they was created to do, but that's just how they are right now. So what do? We pray for them, we love on them, we're here to assist them, just like you said, we're here to assist them however we can, but we don't condemn them. But if you ask the question, then we got to give a very honest answer to that. So.
That's so true. I just found it now. The psychologist I was more or less referring to earlier was Dr. Joseph Nicolosi. If anyone's interested, it's Dr. Joseph Nicolosi. He's more or less kind of famous, kind of important guy. But something else I did notice behind the question is that, it's it's kind of coming from someone who is unsaved, really. It's the kind of question you would only ask if you were, kind of skeptical of Christianity and didn't really believe in it. And this is the kind of, we're gonna get into some more questions similar to this one later, so I'll keep it brief. But for Christians, we see this world as a means to an end, whereas your typical atheist would see the world as an end. You live your life and then you die. But for Christians, the way you live your life is very much determined in how your later on life, your your life in heaven plays out. It's a training ground, if you will, or.
And what you're saying is on point. I mean, for most people who don't believe about Jesus, don't believe about the Bible, they see this world as this is it. So the life that I live here, that's it. But for a Christian, you have an earnest expectation or a hope, because God says, hey, if you accept my son Jesus, then you would have everlasting life, which means not only life here, but life with him even after your life here on earth. So we see it as a passing through, where some people see it as a life here as a final destination. So it also says that when people who only have the hope here, then you can be most miserable. So, it's interesting because even in this country right now, I know you'll probably get into this as well, there is a bill that they were trying to pass that would almost criminalize it for you to have a conversation with someone to try to convince them to be anything other than what it is that they profess to be. Now, they can come and seek help from you, but you can't go and let them know, hey, there is a different way to live life. I mean, you don't have to live life that way. So, but it got stuck in the House, so it didn't get passed through Parliament. So, but it's something that they're trying to do to try to silence people from telling people the truth about there's a different alternative.